Bet you didn't hear about this one yet. The Washington Post is reporting that Donald Trump has offered the job of Deputy Defense Secretary to billionaire investor Steve Feinberg. A spokesman for Feinberg declined to say if he's accepted the potential nomination, and Trump aides say nothing is final until Trump announces it. But there are concerns about potential conflicts of interest. You don't know this guy, so I'm going to tell you about him. Back in 2017, Bloomberg reported, quote, through his $30 billion investment firm, Cerberus, Feinberg has bought companies that, ready for this, refuel spy planes, train Green Berets, make, as in produce, build sniper rifles, and watch America's foes from space. Okay, well, our nightcap is still here. Dan, you know Steve Feinberg's. I mean, Cerberus has been one of the biggest investment firms on Wall Street for years and years. Donald Trump wanted to give him a huge job in the last administration. And there were so many conflicts of interest, it wasn't getting over. I remember when the huge Bloomberg expose came out, it was like, damn, he's never getting a job. We now live in a whole new world.
Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, we can go back to Rex Tillerson, we can go back all the way to Dick Cheney. I mean, like these sorts of, I guess these conflicts of interest lie more with Republican administrations when you think about it, and maybe I'm just being selective.
Except he actually owns companies that sell basically AR-15s.
Yes. Elon Musk. I mean, it's Starlink, it's SpaceX, it's, subsidies for, electric vehicles. It's, a whole host of things. His relationship with China, they make half their cars in Shanghai, I mean, so think about these sorts of relationships. So I guess I'm less concerned with someone like this. When you think about a lot of the economic appointments that we've seen, I think a lot of folks feel pretty decent about them. If you had a Kash Patel running the national economics, or something like that, I mean, we'd be deeply worried. So when you look at Treasury, you look at what he might do as it relates to the Fed at some point in the next couple of years. I mean, some of these choices, I think we can look back to Mnuchin, Gary Cohn, and say, okay, that worked out okay. And that's a really important part of this whole mandate, because that's why we just talked about inflation and the like here. I mean, these are like adults in the room.
Scott Bessent, really strong pick. But let's talk about the politics of this, right? Steve Feinberg is going to be a controversial guy with conflict of interest. He'll be number 2, with the number 1 guy being Pete Hegseth. Can this administration sort of stomach multiple guys being controversial, newsworthy, news-making guys? At some point, you have to have people with senior jobs who just know how to get the trains running on time, know how government works.
Yeah, and in Trump's first administration, I think there was, in calculations, 3,400 conflicts of interest, right? We don't talk about that anymore, but it was real and is quite significant, and I don't imagine that it's going to change and probably get worse in this administration. I actually was thinking about when you mentioned Mike Bloomberg, because I worked on that third race, the controversial race.
I remember that.
Right? But I also remember that in 2005, him running for re-election, he got 47% of the black vote. And what was always interesting about Mike Bloomberg is that you may have disagreed with him on some policy, but he was very clear that he wanted to put good people in positions that actually cared about management.
And he
did. And I think that is to answer your question about Donald Trump, putting loyalists there is one thing, but putting loyalists there with no interest in serving the public is a whole other story. That if they're there to not only pay fealty to him, but also to extend their own ambitions, that's where it becomes problematic. And if you don't go to the FBI, go to any other sources of where people are actually going to look into your background and vet you, then all you're going to have are the Elon Musks of the world and all of these other wealthy folks actually enriching themselves and then enriching Donald Trump, and then essentially running the world. It's going to be like 4 people running the world.
But isn't that, Mike Bloomberg is sort of the most extreme example, because Mike's one of his best qualities, right, is he picks the best teams, right? If you sit down mano a mano with Mike Bloomberg, he actually doesn't have Barack Obama magnetism or Bill Clinton. His magic is he surrounds himself with the highest quality, most talented people in the most important roles. And what you're looking at now is Trump picking his ultimate homeboys.
Well, I remember after 9/11, on his campaign, he was saying, you know what, I'm going to run the city in many ways that I ran my business. We're going to be efficient. We're going to get the economy back up and running. You don't hear that from Donald Trump. There's no, I've heard the voter. I'm going to bring these people in to be responsive to the people that voted for me, and this is what they're going to do. That's what a normal politician, somebody that cares about public service, would actually say, and how they would deliver these picks. That's not what he's doing. He's bringing on people who would speak at the MSG rally. That's very different. That's a very different calculus here. And that's why I think, to your original question, you're going to see a lot of these types of conflicts and chaos because they're ego-driven, they're not people-driven. And that is the difference between someone who's really focused on loyalty and another who's focused on serving the public.
And I'm going to go back to those everyday voters. They're not really paying attention to conflict of interest because I'm guessing they would say, aren't they all conflicted? Aren't they all corrupt?
100%. I was going to say, I don't think it's a matter of looking at this administration. I think when you go across the country, you have the privilege to have the job that I do for this network, for these networks, for this news organization, and get to meet people where they live and where they're at. This is not a new conversation for people. I think people look at people in Washington, D.C., all across the country and say they do not reflect the lives that I have, the lives that we lead, what's happening in my community, the things that I care about day to day. Those people look like they have more influence, more power. And I know I'm speaking generally, but that's how people feel. That's how people feel. And so I think when they look at, and I'm not excusing any particular pick or deliberation about how people in this incoming administration or his last one were picked. Everybody should be looked at, on an individual basis. But that's just the fact of the matter about how people feel across the country. Washington, D.C. does not reflect the lives of the people that I get to go out and meet every 4 years.
And they're saying, maybe you don't like these new picks, but the world hasn't been working for me.
But for me, the question becomes, what is the measuring rod for success? And the reason I ask that is because with all of us having these different metrics by which we're judging a Donald Trump Part 2 presidency, it becomes much more difficult to critique the way that he is, to borrow you all's terms, flooding the zone with his loyalists. And the concern that I have is that by using improper metrics to measure his success, this becomes more and more normalized in a way where it's like, look, it was done before, this is normal practice now, and this is where our political space is headed and staying because it worked. But we don't know what working looks like. We don't know what it means because, again, we have these different measures around what success actually is. So I think it's important to understand, how are we actually judging the results that we will see?
Well, it's interesting you say that because I've been thinking about that with respect to the pardon question. Because for the voter, is the voter going to see what Joe Biden did and say that this is just a man protecting his son? Because most people don't have issues with the merit of the cases. It's the fact that he said he wouldn't do it and then did it anyway. And and then when people comment on it,
and then when you compare that to all the things yes.
But when folks comment and say he shouldn't have done it, the Democrats should have, and the point is that Democrats have lost the moral high ground. And that's why I go to your point, which is like, we've tried the moral high ground. Voters said, we don't believe you on the moral high ground. So what do we have, what do folks have left to be able to say, you know what, this is the standard, and you have crossed that standard. You've either met it or you've gone far below it, but where is that actual standard?
But you can't have it both ways. And I think that's the real thing that people have to understand. You do not, at this point, if you want to say, look, Republicans have been in the mud, slinging mud, playing dirty this entire time, and now this is what we're going to do, that's fine. But you have to then abandon the argument about we are the protectors of democracy and American democratic institutions. You don't get to say we did it because they've been doing it for so long, and we are also somehow simultaneously concerned with the upholding of American democratic principles.